Get out of my neighborhood! You people don't belong
The officer
here.
slammed his palm on the roof so hard, the car shook. The man inside didn't flinch. Both hands on the wheel,
You deaf?
back straight, silent.
I said get out!
Calloway leaned in, nose almost touching the glass.
You make me sick. Just looking at you.
The man turned his head, slowly, calmly, the way someone does when they've heard it all before.
Officer, I'd advise you to reconsider your next move.
Or what?
He tapped his badge.
You'll call
I'm the
somebody?
law here, boy, and I say you're done. The man
I'm the
exhaled,
law here, boy.
quiet, steady. What happened
And I
next
say you're done.
changed everything. And honestly, this officer had no idea who he just picked a fight with. Man, he really picked the wrong one. Let's get into it. Let me take you back, just a few hours before that moment. Sycamore Falls, Virginia, a small suburban town about 40 minutes south of Richmond.
Population somewhere around 62,000. The kind of place where people wave at each other from their driveways, where the farmers market runs every Saturday morning, where "Support Our Troops" banners hang from every other lamppost like wallpaper. Nice town. Quiet town. Safe town. At least, that depends on who you ask. Because underneath all that charm, the Sycamore Falls Police Department had a problem. And it wasn't small. 3 excessive force complaints in the last 2 years. One of them settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. And the number of officers disciplined for any of it? 0. Not a single one. Every complaint is reviewed internally. Every complaint dismissed. Case closed. Move on. Now, remember that, because it matters later. The man at the center of this story is Officer Brent Calloway. White, 41 years old, 11 years on the force, built like someone who never missed a gym session but skipped every sensitivity training. His colleagues described him as someone who doesn't back down. His supervisors called him overzealous but effective. Overzealous. Hold on to that word. You're going to hear it again. Calloway had 2 prior complaints on file, both filed by black motorists. Both were dismissed after internal review. One man said Calloway pulled him over for no reason and searched his car without consent. The other said Calloway called him suspicious for walking through a parking lot in broad daylight. Neither complaint went anywhere. The system reviewed itself and found nothing wrong. And there was one more detail about Calloway that most people in the department knew, but nobody talked about. His body camera had a habit of malfunctioning during confrontational stops. Funny how that works. The camera's fine all day long, and then the moment things get heated, it glitches. Every single time. But this time, this one particular Sunday evening, that camera stayed on. Every second. Every word. Every sound. And that changes everything. Now, the other man. I'm not going to tell you his name yet. Not his title, not his profession, nothing. Because on that Sunday evening, none of that mattered to Brent Calloway. All Calloway saw was a black man in a dark blue Lincoln sedan driving through a neighborhood that Calloway had decided didn't belong to him. Here's what I will tell you. The man was 54, tall, broad shoulders. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit, not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because he'd just come from an event in Richmond. What kind of event? I'll get to that. His wife sat in the passenger seat. Her name was Nadine. She was an attorney, sharp, composed, the kind of woman who could dismantle your argument before you finished your sentence. They were 15 minutes from home. Gospel music playing low on the stereo, Nadine scrolling through notes on her phone. A Sunday evening like any other, Except the man had a habit. Every time he got into a car, he tucked something into his inside jacket pocket, a small leather holder. He kept it close, always, the way some people keep their phone or their keys. He kept this. It was instinct. It was routine. And in about 20 minutes, that small leather holder was going to be the most important object in this entire story. It was going to sit on the hood of his own car, in plain sight, inches away from the officer who detained him, and that officer was going to ignore it completely. But we're not there yet. Right now, it's 6:44 p.m. The sun is dropping behind the tree line. The streets are turning gold, and Brent Calloway is sitting in his patrol cruiser at the intersection of Linden Road and Maple Drive, watching every car that passes. And then he sees it. A dark blue Lincoln sedan, tinted windows, clean, moving at exactly the speed limit. Calloway sits up straighter. His hand moves to the gear shift, and two lives are about to collide in a way that neither one of them expected, but only one of them was ready for. So, what made Calloway follow that car? What was it about a clean sedan on a quiet Sunday evening that set him off? The answer to that question is the whole point of this story. 6:48 p.m. Calloway pulled out from the intersection and followed the Lincoln. No lights, no siren, just following. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks. No traffic violation, no broken taillight, no illegal turn, no expired tags, nothing. Just a dark sedan driven by a black man in a neighborhood that Brent Calloway had already decided he didn't belong in. 4 blocks is not a traffic stop. 4 blocks is a decision. At the end of the 4th block, Calloway hit his lights, red and blue flashing across the quiet suburban street. Lincoln slowed, signal on, pulled to the curb. Smooth, calm. The kind of stop that tells you the driver has done absolutely nothing wrong and knows it. Calloway stepped out of his cruiser. He didn't rush. He walked slow, deliberate, one hand resting on his belt, near his holster. Not on it, near it, close enough to remind you it was there. He approached the driver's side window and tapped the roof, twice, hard. License and registration, now. No good evening, no sir, no explanation, no reason given. Just a command. The man inside the Lincoln had both hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. He turned his head slightly and spoke. Calm, measured. The kind of voice that fills a courtroom without ever raising its volume. Good evening, officer. May I ask why I've been stopped? Calloway didn't blink. I said license and registration. Don't make me repeat myself. I heard you, officer. I'm asking why I've been pulled over. Calloway leaned closer, his face inches from the window. You want to do this the hard way? Fine. We'll do it the hard way. Now, the man did what anyone would do when an officer asks for identification. He reached, slowly, carefully. His right hand moved toward the inside pocket of his jacket, the pocket where he always kept his wallet, the pocket where he kept that leather holder. He didn't lunge. He didn't grab. He moved the way a man moves when he knows that every gesture matters, when he knows that the wrong twitch could cost him his life. It didn't matter. Calloway stepped back. His hand went to his holster, on it now, not near it, and his voice turned into something sharp and loud. Hands! Let me see your hands! Don't move! The man froze, his right hand suspended in midair, 5 inches from his own pocket. Nadine, his wife, gasped from the passenger seat. Not a scream, a gasp. The sound of a woman who has seen this play out before and knows exactly where it goes. Officer, the man said, still calm, still steady. I am reaching for my identification. That is what you asked me to do. I didn't tell you to reach. I told you to show me your hands. There's a difference. There isn't. But in that moment, on that street, with that badge and that holster, Calloway got to decide what words meant. 2 minutes later, backup arrived. A second cruiser pulled up behind Calloway's. 2 officers stepped out. Sergeant Dale Morrison, Calloway's shift supervisor. 15 years on the force, a man who had built his career on one simple principle. Don't contradict your officers in front of civilians. And beside him, Officer Emma Sutton, 26 years old, 2 years on the job, still new enough to feel uncomfortable, but too junior to say anything about it. Morrison walked up to Calloway. "What do we got?" Calloway didn't look away from the Lincoln. "Suspicious vehicle, the driver's being non-compliant." Morrison glanced at the car, at the man in the suit, at the woman in the passenger seat, at the clean sedan parked perfectly against the curb. Something flickered across his face, maybe doubt, maybe recognition that this didn't look right. But whatever it was, it lasted about 2 seconds. Then it was gone. "All right, your call." 2 words. Your call. That's all it took. Morrison had just handed Calloway a blank check, and they both knew it. Sutton stood off to the side. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Her hand was nowhere near her weapon. Her eyes moved between Calloway and the man in the car and back again. She said nothing. Calloway turned back to the window. "Step out of the vehicle. Now." "Officer, on what basis am I being detained? I have a right to know." Calloway smiled. Not a real smile. The kind of smile that tells you the person behind it has already decided how this ends. "On the basis that I'm the law here, and I said, get out." The man paused. He looked at Nadine. She looked back at him. Something passed between them. Not words, not a plan. Just the quiet understanding of 2 people who have navigated moments like this together more times than anyone should have to. He opened the door. Slowly. He stepped out. He stood a full 3 inches taller than Calloway, suit pressed, shoulders back. He did not raise his voice. He did not clench his fists. He did not give Calloway a single reason. And it didn't matter, because Calloway didn't need a reason. He never did. "Hands on the hood. Spread your feet." The man complied, hands flat on the warm metal of his own car, on his own street, in front of his own neighbors. Calloway patted him down, rough, not careful. The kind of search that's designed to humiliate, not to find anything. And during that search, he reached into the jacket pocket, the same pocket the man had been reaching for, and pulled out a leather wallet. He flipped it open, glanced at the driver's license, tossed it on the hood like it was junk mail. And then, right there, in his hands, was the leather credential holder. Small, dark, tucked beside the wallet. Calloway looked at it, turned it over once, and set it on the hood, face down, unopened. He didn't open it. He didn't care what was inside, because he had already decided everything he needed to know about this man, and nothing inside a leather case was going to change his mind. Remember that. The credential holder, right there on the hood, inches from his fingers. The answer to every question Calloway should have been asking. And he set it down and walked away. "You match a description," Calloway said. "Suspect in a vehicle theft ring operating in this area." The man turned his head slightly. "What description?" "Black male, dark sedan." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on your chest. "That's not a description, officer. That's a demographic." Calloway's jaw tightened. He didn't respond to that. The passenger door opened. Nadine stepped out, heels on pavement, briefcase in hand. "Officer, I'm an attorney.
My husband has complied with every single instruction you've given. You have not articulated a lawful basis for this detention. I'm advising you, clearly and formally, to either state your probable cause or release him, right now." Calloway turned to her. "Ma'am, get back in the vehicle, or you'll be detained too." Morrison stepped forward.
Not toward Calloway, toward Nadine. He put his hand on her elbow, firm, guiding, the way you'd steer a child away from something, and pushed her back toward the car. She pulled her arm free, hard. "Don't touch me. I have committed no crime." Morrison said nothing. He just stood there, blocking her path, a wall of silence and authority. Sutton watched from the side. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then she leaned toward Morrison and said, barely above a whisper, "Sarge, shouldn't we maybe just run his ID first?" Morrison didn't even look at her. "Calloway's got this." 3 words. And with those 3 words, the last safety net disappeared. Calloway reached for his handcuffs. The click of metal was the loudest sound on that street. "I'm detaining you, pending identity verification." The man, still calm, still measured, still speaking in that low, steady voice that had not cracked once, said, "I strongly advise you to reconsider what you are about to do." Is that a threat? No. It's a professional courtesy. Professional courtesy, a phrase that lawyers use with other lawyers, that judges use with other judges, a phrase that should have stopped Calloway dead in his tracks if he'd had the awareness to hear it for what it was. He didn't. The handcuffs went on, behind the back, tight. A 54-year-old man in a 3-piece suit, handcuffed on his own street in front of his own house while his wife stood 6 feet away with tears she refused to let fall. And the neighbors, 5, 6, maybe 8 of them now, stood on their lawns and their porches, watching. One of them lifted a phone and started recording. And Nadine. Look at Nadine. Her face wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was something worse. It was exhaustion. The deep, bone-level exhaustion of a woman who has watched her husband be dignified in the face of this exact humiliation before. Who is tired, so deeply tired of his dignity being required just to survive a Sunday drive home. That face, that exhaustion, that's the image that stays with you. Now, I gotta stop here because this man did everything right. Everything. Hands on the wheel, calm voice, full compliance. And it still wasn't enough. That's not a bad day. That's something broken. And y'all, it's about to get so much worse. So now we've got a man in handcuffs, a wife pushed aside, a sergeant who signed off on silence, a junior officer who tried to speak and got shut down, and a credential holder sitting face down on the hood of a car holding an answer that nobody bothered to look for. The question is, what happens when they take him in? And what's waiting for Brent Calloway on the other side of this night that he cannot possibly see coming? Calloway opened the back door of his cruiser and guided the man inside. No hand on the head to protect him from the doorframe. No seatbelt. Just a shove, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to say, "I'm in charge." The door slammed shut. Through the rear window, the man sat perfectly still, hands cuffed behind his back, suit creased at the shoulders, eyes forward. He didn't look at Calloway. He didn't look at the neighbors with their phones raised. He just sat there. Like a man who had been in rooms far more important than the back of a patrol car, simply waiting for the world to catch up. Calloway pulled away from the curb. No siren, just a slow, satisfied drive toward the precinct, like a hunter carrying his trophy home. Behind him, Nadine. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She walked to the Lincoln, sat down, closed the door, picked up her phone. One call, 45 seconds. Calm, precise. She didn't call a lawyer. She didn't call the news. She called someone else entirely. And I'll tell you who. But not yet. Just know this. That 45-second phone call set something in motion that Brent Calloway could not stop, could not outrun, and would not see coming until it was already too late. Then Nadine followed the cruiser to the precinct. At the station, the man was brought through the side entrance. Booking area, fluorescent lights, the smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner. A place designed to make you feel small. They fingerprinted him. Left hand, right hand. They photographed him. Front, side. The camera flash bouncing off his suit jacket. A mugshot of a man who had done nothing. He answered every question. Name, date of birth, address. Not a single word of protest. The booking officer typed the information into the system, and then he stopped. His fingers hovered above the keyboard. His eyes locked on the screen. Something was there. Something that made his face go flat. He looked at the man, looked at the screen, back at the man. He said nothing, finished processing in silence. But his hands moved faster now, and he wouldn't make eye contact again. Remember that. The booking officer saw something and chose to stay quiet. Meanwhile, the break room. Calloway sat at a folding table with coffee and a blank incident report. Morrison sat across from him, relaxed. Two guys wrapping up a routine night. Calloway wrote, "Let me tell you what the report said. Observed suspicious vehicle in residential area. Vehicle matched general description in ongoing auto theft investigation. Driver made a furtive movement toward his waistband. Driver was non-compliant and became verbally confrontational." Furtive movement, non-compliant, verbally confrontational. Every word was a lie. And there was a body camera that proved it. But Calloway had written reports like this before. Every time, they stuck. Every time, the system read his words and moved on. Morrison read it, picked up a pen, signed the bottom. Supervisor endorsement. Done. 2 men, 1 lie, official paper, stamped with authority. The man was placed in a holding cell, metal bench, concrete walls. He sat down, folded his hands in his lap. Still in his suit, still composed. He didn't pace, didn't pound the door, didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't need to. Because, and this is the part that will haunt you, he was the system they thought was going to protect them. That sounds like a metaphor. It's not. Out front, Nadine walked through the precinct doors. She didn't go to the desk. She didn't ask for a complaint form. She walked straight to the desk officer. "I need your watch commander. Now." "Ma'am, the watch commander is unavailable." "Then make him available. Because in about 20 minutes, you're going to wish someone with authority had talked to me first." She sat down, opened her briefcase, crossed her legs, and waited. 7:22 p.m. Calloway, laughing in the break room. 7:35 p.m. Morrison, signing off on the report. 7:41 p.m. Sutton, sitting alone in her cruiser, staring at the dashboard, replaying every second of that stop. And the man in the holding cell sat perfectly still. Hands folded, eyes open, waiting. Not like someone who was scared, like someone who knew exactly what was coming. And what was coming was going to tear this precinct apart from the inside out. 7:58 p.m. The precinct phone rang. The desk officer picked up. Routine. Probably a noise complaint, a lost dog, a neighbor dispute, the usual Sunday night calls. It wasn't. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. The kind of tone that doesn't ask, it informs. "This is Deputy Marshal Randall with the United States Marshal Service. You are currently holding a sitting federal judge in your facility. His name is Terrence R. Hayes, United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia. I need immediate confirmation of his status, and I need your commanding officer on this line within the next 2 minutes. The desk officer's hand stopped moving. His pen slipped from his fingers and hit the counter. He didn't respond right away. He just stared at the phone, like it had turned into something he'd never seen before. "Sir, are you still there?" Yes, I'm here. Hold, please." He put the call on hold, stood up. His chair scraped the floor loud enough to echo through the lobby. Nadine, still sitting in the waiting area, looked up from her briefcase. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. She already knew. The desk officer walked to the break room. Not walked. Moved. Fast. The kind of pace that falls just short of running. He pushed the door open and found Calloway and Morrison exactly where they'd been for the past hour. Coffee cups. Paperwork. Comfortable. "The man you brought in." Calloway looked up, annoyed. "What about him?" "He's a federal judge." The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has a sound, like the air itself just stopped. Morrison's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. His eyes locked on the desk officer, waiting for a correction, a punchline, something. It didn't come. Calloway blinked. Once. Twice. No, that's not right. "The United States Marshal Service is on line 2 right now, asking for our commanding officer, so I'd say it's very right." Calloway's face did something it hadn't done all night. It changed. The smirk was gone. The confidence was gone. The swagger that had carried him from the intersection to the cruiser to the break room. Gone. Replaced by something he wasn't used to wearing. Fear. Morrison stood up first. He didn't say a word to Calloway. He walked out of the break room and went straight to the holding area, down the hallway, past the booking desk, past the vending machines that hummed in the silence, all the way to the cell. He looked through the window, and there was Terrence Hayes, sitting exactly where they'd left him, hands folded, back straight, suit wrinkled at the shoulders, but everything else, everything, perfectly composed. The same man who had stood on his own street with his hands on the hood of his car and said nothing while they put him in cuffs. The same man. The exact same man. Except now, Morrison knew who he was. Morrison opened the cell door. His mouth moved before his brain could stop it. "Judge Hayes, I'm so..." Terrence stood, slowly, the way he did everything. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his cuffs, looked Morrison directly in the eyes. "You may address me as Your Honor." Morrison swallowed. "And I'd like my credential holder, please. The one your officer chose not to open." That line, right there, that's the one, the credential holder, sitting on the hood of the car, in Calloway's hands, turned over once and set down, face down, unopened. The answer, right there. And he threw it away because he'd already made up his mind. Morrison retrieved the personal effects, wallet, phone, and the credential holder. He brought them back to Terrence and handed them over. His hands were shaking. Terrence opened the holder himself, held it up, not for Morrison, for the camera mounted in the corner of the hallway. Inside, a gold-embossed identification card. United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia. A photograph. A title. An appointment confirmed by the President of the United States and ratified by the United States Senate. This was not a business card, not a membership badge, not something you order online. This was the authority of the federal judiciary. And Brent Calloway had laid it face down on the hood of a car between a tossed driver's license and a pair of handcuffs. Terrence put the holder back in his jacket pocket, where it always belonged. He walked out of the holding area, down the hallway. Nadine was standing at the end of it.
not sitting anymore, standing, briefcase in one hand, and in the other, a single printed sheet of paper. She handed it to him. He looked at it. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. He folded it, put it in his breast pocket, and kept walking. Calloway was standing at the far end of the corridor. He hadn't moved from the spot where the desk officer had delivered the news. His face was white, his mouth slightly open, his hands at his sides, doing nothing. For the first time all night, doing absolutely nothing. Terrence stopped in front of him. Close. Not aggressive, just close enough that Calloway couldn't look anywhere else. Officer Calloway. Calloway didn't speak. You told me you were the law. Nothing. You were mistaken. Terrence's voice didn't rise, it didn't crack, it didn't shake. It stayed exactly where it had been all night, low, steady, immovable. I am the law, and you are finished. He held Calloway's gaze for 3 full seconds. Then he turned and walked away, Nadine beside him, shoulder to shoulder, out the front door of the precinct and into the night air. And Calloway just stood there, staring at the empty hallway, listening to their footsteps fade. By the time Terrence and Nadine reached their car, the neighbor's cell phone video from the traffic stop had already been posted online. 40,000 views in the first hour. By midnight, 600,000. By morning, every local news station in Virginia was running the same headline. Federal judge handcuffed during routine traffic stop in Sycamore Falls. There was no containing it. There was no spinning it. There was no internal review that could make this disappear. But here's the thing, and I need you to sit with this for a moment. Terrence and Nadine drove home that night. Same route, same road, past the same spot where the lights had flashed. They drove in silence. No gospel music this time. No phone, no notes. Just silence. And somewhere between the precinct and their driveway, Nadine reached over and took his hand. He'd won. In every way that mattered legally, he had won. But there is a kind of wound that winning doesn't close, a kind of exhaustion that vindication doesn't touch. Because the credential saved him, the title saved him, the Senate confirmation saved him. But what about the next man on that road who doesn't have any of those things? That question hung in the car like smoke, and neither of them said a word. By 8 o'clock the next morning, the video had crossed 2 million views. Not local anymore, national. Cable news panels were already debating. Social media was on fire. And the Sycamore Falls Police Department released a statement. We are aware of the incident involving a traffic stop on Sunday evening and are conducting a thorough internal review. A thorough internal review. 4 words that usually mean one thing. We're hoping you forget. But this time, forgetting wasn't an option. Because this time, the man in the video wasn't just a citizen. He was a federal judge with the power to make the next decade of their professional lives very, very uncomfortable. And the whole country was watching. Pastor Leonard Owens, a community leader who had been raising concerns about the department for years, held a press conference outside the precinct at 9 a.m. sharp. This is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. And the only reason we are standing here today, the only reason cameras are pointed at this building, is because the victim happened to be a federal judge. What about the ones who aren't? What about the names we'll never know? That question landed like a stone in still water, and the ripples were already spreading. Chief Raymond Aldridge had no choice. He couldn't wait. He couldn't stall.
He couldn't bury this in paperwork and hope the news cycle moved on. So he did the one thing the department hadn't done in years. He opened a real investigation. Deputy Inspector Carolyn Marsh was assigned to lead it. Marsh had been with Internal Affairs for 9 years. She was known inside the department as someone you didn't want across the table from you. Not because she was cruel, but because she was thorough. She didn't cut corners. She didn't protect badges. She followed evidence wherever it went, even when it went somewhere uncomfortable. Marsh requested everything. Body cam footage, dash cam footage, Calloway's incident report, Morrison's supervisor endorsement, dispatch logs, booking records, prior complaint files, personnel records for both officers. Everything. And then she started watching. The body cam footage ran 22 minutes and 14 seconds, unedited, uninterrupted. For once, the camera didn't malfunction. For once, every word, every gesture, every silence was captured. 6:48, 12. Calloway activates his lights. No traffic violation recorded before this moment. None. 6:49, 01. First contact. No greeting, no explanation. License and registration. Now. 6:50, 44. The man reaches for his jacket pocket. Calloway's hand goes to his holster. Hands! Don't move! 6:52, 18. I'm the law here, and I said get out. 6:55, 30. The credential holder sits on the hood. Calloway sets it down, doesn't open it, walks away. 6:58, 02. Handcuffs applied. The man is fully compliant, has been compliant the entire time. 9 minutes and 50 seconds. That's how long it took to stop, search, humiliate, and handcuff a federal judge who had committed no crime, violated no law, and offered no resistance. Marsh watched the footage 3 times. Then she pulled the dash cam. It confirmed what the body cam showed. No traffic violation before the stop. No erratic driving. No expired registration. Nothing. Calloway followed a clean car for 4 blocks and then pulled it over. Next, the dispatch logs. Marsh checked for any BOLO, be on the lookout, matching the description Calloway had given. Black male, dark sedan, vehicle theft ring. Nothing. No BOLO, no dispatch call. No reported stolen vehicle matching that make or model anywhere in the county that night. The description Calloway used didn't come from dispatch. It didn't come from a report. It came from nowhere. He made it up. Then Marsh opened Calloway's incident report, and she read it next to the footage, line by line. The report said, driver made a furtive movement toward his waistband. The footage showed a man slowly reaching for his inside jacket pocket after being asked for identification. The report said, driver was non-compliant with verbal commands. The footage showed a man who kept his hands on the steering wheel, answered every question calmly, and complied with every instruction. The report said, driver became verbally confrontational. The footage showed a man who asked, politely, twice, why he had been stopped. 3 claims, 3 lies, all signed off by a supervisor. Marsh pulled Morrison's endorsement. His signature was at the bottom of every page. Clean, confident, no notes, no questions, no flags raised. 2 men, 1 lie. Official paper. And then, something Marsh didn't expect. Officer Emma Sutton requested a meeting. She came alone. No union representative, no attorney. Just her, a written statement, and the look of someone who hadn't slept. Sutton sat across from Marsh and confirmed everything the footage showed. Terrence Hayes was calm from the first second to the last. Calloway initiated every escalation. Morrison endorsed it without question. And when Sutton suggested, quietly, to Morrison that they should run the man's ID before escalating, Morrison shut her down with 3 words. "Calloway's got this." But Sutton didn't stop there. This wasn't the first time. Marsh leaned forward. Sutton described 2 other stops she had been present for in the past 6 months. Both involved black drivers. Both followed the same pattern. No clear violation, aggressive contact, vague justifications. Neither resulted in a complaint. One driver was a 23-year-old college student who was too shaken to do anything but drive home. The other was a 40-year-old father of 3 who told Sutton afterward, off the record, that filing a complaint against a police officer in a town like Sycamore Falls was just asking for more trouble. Marsh wrote it all down. "Why didn't you report this before?" Sutton paused, looked at her hands. "Because I told myself it wasn't that bad, that maybe I was reading it wrong, that Calloway was just intense." She looked up. "But I wasn't reading it wrong. I knew it then, and I know it now. I just didn't want to be the one." Marsh nodded, didn't judge, wrote it down, and moved on. Next, Calloway's interview. He arrived with his union representative, sat down across from Marsh with his arms crossed and his jaw tight. He still had the posture of a man who believed he'd done nothing wrong. Marsh started simple. "Walk me through the stop." Calloway did, almost word for word from his report. Suspicious vehicle, general description. Furtive movement, non-compliance. Marsh listened, let him finish. Then she asked one question. "What dispatch call were you responding to?" "It wasn't a specific call. It was general awareness." "General awareness of what?" "There's been auto theft activity in the area." "Can you cite the report?" Silence. "Can you cite any bolo matching that vehicle?" More silence. "Officer Calloway, there is no dispatch record, no bolo, and no stolen vehicle report matching a dark blue Lincoln sedan in Sycamore Falls or the surrounding county on the night in question. So I'm going to ask you again, why did you stop that car?" Calloway shifted in his seat. His arms uncrossed. His hands went flat on the table. "I used my professional judgment." Your professional judgment. A man in a 3-piece suit, driving with his wife, in his own neighborhood, at the speed limit, on a Sunday evening. And your professional judgment told you what exactly? That he was a car thief? Calloway opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The vehicle had tinted windows. I couldn't see. The body cam shows you approached the driver's side window and made visual contact immediately. You saw his face. You saw his suit. You saw his wife. Within the first 3 seconds. Nothing. So I'll ask once more. On what basis did you make this stop? Nothing. Marsh let the silence sit. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then she moved on. Morrison's interview was shorter, but in some ways, worse. Morrison didn't lie outright. He deflected. Every answer was a step sideways. I trusted my officer's assessment. I wasn't present for the initial contact. I was there in a support capacity. Marsh let him talk. Then she opened her file. Sergeant Morrison, you signed off on a report that described a fully compliant civilian as non-compliant. You physically redirected his wife, a licensed attorney, without cause or consent. You dismissed a junior officer's suggestion to verify the subject's identity before escalating. And at no point during the encounter did you question, challenge, or override any decision made by Officer Calloway. She closed the file. At what point did your support capacity include questioning anything? Morrison stared at the table. He had no answer. Because there was no answer.
He didn't question it because he never intended to. He was there to back Calloway up, not to supervise him, not to protect the public, just to back him up. And that silence, that complicity, that willingness to stand behind a lie and call it procedure was the infrastructure that made officers like Calloway possible. Marsh compiled her report. It took 4 days. When it landed on Chief Aldridge's desk, it was 41 pages long, and every page pointed in the same direction. Officer Brent Calloway conducted a traffic stop without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. His incident report contained material falsehoods directly contradicted by body cam and dash cam footage. The stop constituted a violation of the Fourth Amendment rights of Terrence and Nadine Hayes. Calloway's prior complaint history, combined with Officer Sutton's testimony, indicated a pattern of racially motivated policing.
Sergeant Dale Morrison failed in his supervisory duty by endorsing a false report and failing to de-escalate a situation that required de-escalation. Marsh's recommendation was clear: termination for Calloway, suspension and demotion for Morrison, department-wide retraining, overhaul of the internal complaint review process, establishment of a civilian oversight board. The report used one word to describe Calloway's pattern of behavior, the same word his own supervisor had used years earlier to praise him: overzealous. Except now, it wasn't a compliment. It was a finding, an official, documented, career-ending finding. Funny how the same word can mean two completely different things, depending on who's finally paying attention. Chief Aldridge read the report on Thursday morning, 41 pages. He finished it in one sitting. Then he read it again. By Friday afternoon, he made his decision. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. Because a sitting federal judge could pursue criminal charges under federal civil rights statutes. Because the body cam footage was playing on a loop on every news channel in the state. Because 2 million people had watched it online and the number was still climbing. And because the report, sitting on his desk, left him exactly 0 room to do what the department had always done before. Nothing. Calloway was called in first. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. Aldridge sat on one side of the table. Marsh sat beside him. Calloway sat across from them with his union representative, who said almost nothing. Aldridge kept it short. Terminated. Effective immediately. Badge and service weapon to be surrendered before leaving the building. No appeal recommendation. No transfer option. No quiet resignation to save face. Done. Calloway didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't slam his fist on the table. He just sat there. The same way Terrence Hayes had sat in the holding cell. Except without the composure, without the dignity, without any of it. He stood up, unclipped his badge, set it on the table, placed his service weapon beside it, walked out. The hallway was empty. He passed the break room where he'd laughed and written his lies. He passed the booking desk where the officer had seen the truth on a screen and said nothing. He walked through the front door of the Sycamore Falls precinct for the last time. Outside, 2 news vans were parked across the street. Calloway didn't stop, didn't speak. He got into his personal vehicle, sat behind the wheel for 12 minutes without starting the engine. Then he drove away. He told a man he was the law, and the law disagreed. Morrison came next. 90-day suspension without pay. Demotion from sergeant to patrol officer. Supervisory authority permanently revoked. His career wasn't over. But the version of it he'd built, the comfortable version where silence was a strategy and complicity was invisible, that version was finished. Morrison accepted the terms without a word
signed the paperwork, left the building through the back entrance. No cameras, no statement. Just a man carrying the weight of everything he chose not to do. The legal aftermath moved fast. Terrence and Nadine filed a federal civil rights lawsuit under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 against the city of Sycamore Falls, Officer Calloway, and Sergeant Morrison. The case never went to trial. The city settled within 4 months for an undisclosed amount, but the money wasn't the point. The settlement included a consent decree, and the consent decree had teeth. Mandatory bias training for every officer every year. Revised stop and detain protocols requiring documented reasonable suspicion before any traffic stop.
An independent civilian review board with authority to investigate complaints and recommend discipline. And an early intervention tracking system, flagging officers with multiple complaints for mandatory review before the next complaint became the next headline. Structural change, not just punishment, prevention. Officer Sutton was not disciplined. Marsh's report noted her full cooperation and cited her as a positive example of internal accountability. She didn't speak up on that street. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But she spoke up after. And Marsh made sure that mattered. Sutton transferred to the Community Policing Unit. Within 6 months, she was working directly with the new Civilian Review Board. The officer who had been too junior to say anything was now sitting at the table where decisions were made. It didn't erase what happened on Linden Road. Nothing could. But it was a start. And Terrence Hayes, he released a written statement. No press conference. No interviews. Just words on paper. The tool he'd trusted his entire career. The statement said he did not seek this confrontation, that he recognized his position gave him protections most people in his community do not have, that the reforms were a beginning, not an ending. He returned to the bench the following Monday morning. His first case that day, a civil rights matter, a different plaintiff, a different city, the same story. He put on his robe, picked up his gavel, and went back to work. Because that's what justice does. It doesn't stop. It doesn't rest. It shows up on Monday morning and tries again. Let me take you back to where this started. A quiet street, a Sunday evening, red and blue lights flashing across a dark sedan. One officer, one assumption, one word, boy, aimed at a man whose title carried the weight of the federal government behind it. Terrence Hayes had the credential, the robe, the gavel. 18 years on the federal bench, a confirmation vote by the United States Senate. And none of that, not a single piece of it, prevented what happened to him that night. It only ensured there were consequences after. That's the part that stays with me. Because the system didn't protect Terrence Hayes on Linden Road. His title did. His wife's phone call did. The body camera that happened to stay on did. The neighbor who happened to be recording did. Remove any one of those things, any one, and this story ends differently, quietly, without a headline, without a report, without reform. And that means somewhere tonight, on some other quiet street, in some other small town, the same thing is happening to someone who doesn't have a credential in his jacket pocket. Someone whose wife isn't an attorney. Someone whose neighbor isn't recording. Someone who will drive home, if they get to drive home, and tell no one. But here's what else is true. Sycamore Falls changed. Not perfectly, not overnight. But it changed. Pastor Owen's Community Forum became a monthly event. The first meeting had 300 people. The sixth
had 400. The Civilian Review Board published its first quarterly report within 6 months, including 2 additional excessive force findings that led to corrective action. 2 cases that would have been buried under the old system, exposed under the new one. Officer Sutton stood at a regional law enforcement conference 8 months later and talked about intervention culture, about the cost of silence, about what it means to wear a badge and still choose courage over comfort. Change doesn't happen in one night. It happens in the morning after, and the morning after that. Remember the intersection on Linden Road? It's still there. Pavement, trees, kids on bicycles. Nothing special. But on the community center bulletin board 2 blocks away, there's a flyer. First meeting of the Sycamore Falls Civilian Review Board. Open to the public. All voices welcome. That flyer didn't exist a year ago. It exists now. Because one man sat in a holding cell with his hands folded and waited for the system to remember what it was supposed to be.
Okay, so like this whole story,
I made it up. It's not real. But bro, the way my chest got tight writing it, that part's real. Because stuff like this actually happens out there. And most times, ain't nobody filming. Ain't no badge to flash. That just, yeah, that hits different.
if this story made you feel something, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed yet, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.